Hello and welcome to another video lecture from MrWatkins.com. I'm Mr. Watkins. This particular video is on body cavities and it is geared towards the anatomy class. Now, what I'm going to do on this sheet of paper here is outline or make a kind of a tree form of the different body cavities and how they relate to each other. So I'm going to write the word body cavity right up here at the top. And if you're going to follow along and write things down, then you definitely want to do this in landscape as opposed to portrait. But please remember, when we talk about body cavities, there is an assumption that you had back in ninth grade, an understanding of the three embryonic tissue layers that all true animals have. Now this is the coelomate or the collimate structure that you see, and when we talk about a true body cavity, please remember that a body cavity must be surrounded by muscle tissue. So you really are kind of hollow in the inside, and I'm not just talking about hollow because your digestive system runs through you, but outside of that digestive system, underneath your skin and the abdominal muscles, that's where all your organs are, and that's a cavity. We're going to talk about the different body cavities. And we should have already gone over, you should already understand basic anatomical terms before you even watch this video. So if you haven't, then please go back and review your anatomical terms because you're going to need it before you do this. There really are two major body cavities. We have a dorsal cavity and we have a ventral cavity. Now I'm going to tell you, the dorsal cavity, we don't divide that up very much here, but the ventral cavity we are going to divide up pretty significantly. Now dorsal, back, so this is the cavities that you would find on the back, or on the back side of the trunk, in this case also the head or the cephalic area. Now the dorsal cavity is divided into two other cavities. One of those cavities is the spinal cavity. Your spine runs right up your back, and the spinal cavity is the one that has your vertebrae in it. It is surrounded by meninges. Later on we'll discuss what those things are. It has a fluid on the inside of the sac, and your spine is down inside there, and there's a little bit of a cavity. One of those meninges, one of those coverings, is called the dura, and so when you talk about an epidural, when you have that block for pain when you're going to give a birth, that's where that comes from because you're going into that particular area. The other dorsal cavity, again these are going to be on the back side, is going to be the cranial cavity. Now, the cranial cavity is one that's it's inside the skull, and that's where your brain is. Your brain is actually on more of a dorsal side of the cephalic region as opposed to the ventral side. It's more posterior as opposed to being anterior, if you will, there inside. And the brain, again, surrounded by meninges, a special membrane, and it is basically in a liquid as well. Those are the only two dorsal cavities on the body. So if you think about where that spine is, you're going to need to think about on the other side of that spine, more anterior to the spine, on that ventral side of the spine is where you'll find a lot of the organs, kidneys, bladder, small intestines, those kind of things. And we're going to divide up that area now called the ventral cavity. We're going to divide that up into two broad cavities as well. And one of those is the thoracic cavity. And the thoracic cavity is the chest cavity. This is where your lungs are going to be, the trachea, the heart. It's the chest, thorax. And the other cavity that we have is the abdominopelvic cavity that divides up that ventral cavity. So we divide it up into these two subcavities, if you will, or dividing the cavity up that way. So abdominopelvic. So we're looking at the cavity that is superior when we talk thoracic, and we're looking at a cavity that is inferior when we're talking about the abdominopelvic cavity. Now the abdominopelvic cavity can be divided into two smaller groups, and two smaller cavities, and one again is inferior to the other. And pelvic, if you think of your pelvis down where your hips are, where that pubis bone comes across there on the front, that's going to be the pelvic cavity. And that pelvic cavity has the bladder, the reproductive organs, male or female, depending upon your gender, and some of the large intestine. Okay. Now the abdominopelvic cavity, the upper portion, the top of it is going to be the diaphragm. Diaphragm is a muscle that runs right underneath the it divides actually basically the thoracic cavity and the abdominopelvic cavity, but it's right underneath those ribs there. And if you're in choir, you talk about how you use that diaphragm to help push air in and out of the lungs, so that push or pull air in and out of those lungs so that you can sing. So the abdominal cavity is part of the abdominopelvic cavity, and that's going to include things like the spleen, the gallbladder, the liver, the stomach, the pancreas, small intestines, some of the large intestines, the kidneys, your ureters. And the ureters are going to bring, that's the tube that brings from the kidneys, the urine from the kidneys down to the bladder. And remember, the bladder is in the pelvic cavity. So let me write this one in here real quick. Okay, so ventral cavity is divided into two broad groups, the thoracic and the abdominal pelvic cavity. The abdominal pelvic cavity is inferior to the thoracic cavity, and it is also divided into even smaller, you can divide it even smaller into abdominal cavity and the pelvic cavity. And again, when you want to think about pelvic cavity, think of that place there where your hips are, where that ilium is up on the side, the bones that are on the lateral side there. Think of that almost like a hammock down there where the bladder is sitting. If you're a girl, there's a uterus there. The bottom part of the large intestine, we got a rectum there. And then just above that, that's where you're going to start that inferior side of the abdominal cavity. And you're going to be looking at more of the large intestine and so on, small intestine all the way up to the spleen and the pancreas and the stomach. Now, the thoracic cavity is the one we haven't finished defining here. The thoracic cavity is defined, well, there's really kind of three cavities here, but we really kind of look at it like this. The thoracic cavity, we can divide it into both a right and a left pleural cavity. So you could call that two different cavities, if you wish. Now, just as a hint, if you see the word plural in this form, there's a good chance you're going to be talking about lungs here. You're going to be talking about or structures associated with the lungs. So the right pleural cavity has the right lung. The left pleural cavity has the left lung. Now, the rest of this chest cavity is going to have, excuse me, the sternum end, the metasternum, the heart, the trachea, the left and right bronchi, the esophagus, the thalamus. Those are all going to be in this other side or other part of the cavity, and it's and so it's basically running right in the middle, right between your other cavities. So if this right here was in your view, would be the left pleural cavity, but on the actual organism, it's going to be the right pleural cavity because you're facing this person. And then you'll have your other pleural cavity here, which would be the left. And so we have this middle area here, that mediastinum, that has the trachea in it, the bronchioles in it, has the heart in it. But I just want to make it clear that the heart has its own special cavity, and that's called the pericardial cavity. Okay. So those are those major cavities that we look when we talk about the body cavities in the body. And again, this does go back to the mesoderm, the ectoderm, the endoderm, that embryonic tissue layers that you should have learned or were exposed to in your biology classes in 9th or 10th grade, depending upon when you took that class. Make sure that you know these cavities. Make sure that you know what major organs and organ systems are in each of these cavities. A good study method is to put these cavities on Post-it notes and then go out with a blank sheet of paper and then take that sheet of paper and put the Post-it notes in and try to come up and draw the lines and show where all these different pieces belong and how they fit together. You can also just create it like I've done here and put Post-it notes over the top of it and then go through and see if you can figure that out. The relationship between the cavities is as important as knowing what those organs are and those organ systems are in there. If you've got any questions, please leave me that question out on the forum post or see me in class. And that's it.